The NFL draft is just 24 days away, which means it's time for Mock Draft 1.0. Hi again, Bengals fans, and welcome into Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com. And yes, it is mock draft time. The latest we've ever done our first mock draft, whether it's here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk or at allbengals.com. But with just 24 days to go, we had to dive in what we're going to do each and every week leading up to the draft, which is, like I said, 24 days away, starts April 28th. The Bengals have the 31st overall pick. Well, we're going to do a simulator. This week we used Pro Football Focus's simulator, and I wrote about it at allbengals.com and each player, and I'm going to reflect on it because it would be easy for me to simply do a mock draft of my own, and I will do one where I don't use simulations, but this way it keeps us honest, right? Because a lot of people want Kaiir Elam. A lot of people want Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. A lot of people want Tyler Linderbaum, and I'm on the Linderbaum camp, in the Linderbaum camp as of right now. That being said, there's a pretty good chance that none of those guys are there at 31. And looking at the Bengals and looking at what they need versus what a lot of these teams are going to do, I think the most likely scenario today is that the Bengals trade down. And I did not trade down in this mock, so let's dive right into it. But yeah, trade down from 31 to say 37, 38, something like that. A team moves up to get their quarterback, jumps ahead of the Lions who have the 32nd and 34th pick. One of these quarterbacks are going to fall. Detroit could certainly take one in either of those spots. That being said, the Bengals, well, they're able to get a big-time offensive lineman with the 31st pick in this mock draft. And no, it wasn't Linderbaum. No, Elam wasn't there. No, Andrew Booth Jr. wasn't there. They were all gone when the Bengals were on the clock. But Kenyon Green, the guard out of Texas A&M, was there. And that's who I took. And makes a ton of sense to me if he's still available. He instantly gives them a presence at left guard that can come in and be a high-end run blocker. I think he's solid in pass protection from the jump. Make sure you check out Bengals Sans, Mike Santagata. He wrote a good film breakdown on allbengals.com of Green. But to me, this would essentially be the cherry on top of the Bengals remade offensive line, right? And they've done a good job of building and crafting that Sunday in front of Joe Burrow. Kenyon Green could be, boom, the cherry on top. And that doesn't mean that, it can't still be a competition at left guard. But now you have depth. Whether it's Green or Carman. Let's say Carman balls his tail off and proves that he's deserving of the left guard spot. That's great. Now Green can be a backup in multiple spots for you. And I don't necessarily think that. I think he would start, but that's who I went with at 31st overall. 63rd gets interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, corner. Well, there really wasn't any corners on the board that I thought warranted the 63rd pick. So I went with Josh Paschal, the defensive end from Kentucky. He's got flexibility to play, kick inside on passing downs, help a bit. Right now with the Bengals, you look at it, they don't have a 3-tech. Larry Ogunjobi isn't there. They need one. Maybe they aren't able to get one in this draft, and so they get some of these hybrid guys. They already have a guy like Cam Sample. You bring in someone like Paschal who can kick inside when you need him to, and they want more pass rushing juice. Paschal's a guy that I could certainly see them considering in the second round. Third round, it's Black Mamba time. Coby Bryant. No, not that Black Mamba. Coby Bryant from the University of Cincinnati. Look, the Bengals need a corner, and at some point they're going to take one. Why not take a guy in Bryant who has a ton of starting experience, who was targeted a ton, relatively speaking, because he was playing opposite Sauce Gardner, and teams were just trying to not throw it Sauce Gardner's way. So he's had to deal with it. He's had to deal with speed. He's had to deal with high-end receivers, and he played at a really high level for the University of Cincinnati. I think he would fit really well in a zone type defense. And you look at it, and they wouldn't necessarily need him to be a day one starter, but much like at left guard, you could bring him in and have him compete with the Eli Apples of the world for that spot. So I'd feel pretty content in Coby Bryant. And that's the other part of this, by the way. If there isn't a first-round cornerback on the board, well, you want to address it with a veteran as well. I would expect the Bengals to add another veteran in this scenario, maybe before the draft, certainly after, if they wait until round 3 for a cornerback. Round 4, and this is the part where it's like, all right, is there a tight end available? Most of the top tight ends were gone. And that's the thing. If they don't trade down from 31 or trade down at some point to get an extra pick, it's hard as of today, and things can change, like I said, 24 days away, to see them hitting tight end, cornerback, offensive line, defensive line, edge rush, hitting on all of these different things and in different areas that you want to, bolster the depth, right? Because you draft a tight end, well, it's not really to start this year on paper, but it's to groom and get ready to go and potentially start in 2023. That being said, they take Noah Elliss with the 136th overall pick, a defensive tackle out of Idaho. Big guy, right? 346 pounds. Someone that in the AFC North, you want a bunch of beef up there. You're going to have these teams that are going to run. You look at the AFC North. I think that's what all 3 of these teams want to do in 2022. Deshaun Watson, yeah, of course he can throw it, but they're going to run it with him, and they're certainly going to run it with those 2 running backs in Cleveland that they have, the best 1-2 running back punch in the NFL. The Steelers, we already know that that's what they're going to do with Mitch Trubisky, and that's what the Ravens are built on, as the run game. So adding another meaty, beefy defensive lineman, can't argue with it. And then at the 174th overall pick, they go for a little bit of upside in a wide receiver. And the Bengals, look, they're looking at wide receiver in this draft, and Kevin Austin Jr., I like him a lot. He tested really well in the 90-plus percentile. As far as an athlete goes, was really came into his own, I would say. Led Notre Dame in receiving with 48 receptions, 888 yards, 7 touchdowns. 23 of his receptions came in the final 5 games. So he started to catch on a bit. And so you got a guy who has these traits, and I think he has a pretty high ceiling. Still young. I would go with someone like Austin in that stage of the draft. And look, this is the part. 209. You're talking about 6th round, right? 6th round. What's going to happen in the 6th round? Punter? Matt Araiza, San Diego State. I just think it makes a lot of sense right now. Kevin Huber hasn't re-signed, and if they believe in him, clearly special teams matters. And so can he be what they need? Darren Simmons is going to be looking at him, looking at some other punters in this draft. I think it makes sense. Maybe not 5th round, but 6th round, if he's there, if they believe in him the same way they believed in Evan McPherson last year. Punter doesn't have as much of an impact as kicker. Understand it. That being said, not against it. I could also see them going another route and move towards, the tight end, or maybe you take the tight end in the 4th or 5th, depending on who's there. In this mock, there was not a tight end I thought that was worth it in those rounds, and that's why the Bengals don't get a tight end in this mock draft. 226, the Bengals' first 7th round pick. They take Dixon, another receiver, productive kid, guy who's out of Nicholls State. And look, 6'4", 200 pounds, or that's what he's listed at. He measured at like closer to 6'3". But like his intangibles, and I think at this stage, you go with guys that might have a bit of upside. And you look at him, you look at the athletic traits, you look at his jump ball receiving ability, much like when they took an Auden Tate way back when. You take a guy like Dixon and see, roll the dice almost, and see if he can end up being any type of, productive player or battle for a practice squad spot. Again, at this stage of the draft, it's always tough. And then at 252, and I could see him going at 226, by the way, where I have the Bengals taking Dixon, but Kalon Barnes, another cornerback. So they double dip at receiver, they double dip at cornerback. And the kid from Baylor, look, people are going to be really, really high on him because he ran that 4.23 40-yard dash, the fastest 40-yard dash in the NFL combine this year. Is considered the fastest player in this class, but he was inconsistent. But you have those physical traits, the speed. And if you're Lou Anarumo, you look at it, you're like, man, maybe I can teach him some of this technique stuff. Maybe we could try him on special teams in different roles. Because he's that speedy, might as well try it. So the Bengals double dip at corner with Bryant, with Barnes, the double Bs. They double dip at receiver with Dixon and Austin, not in that order, Austin and then Dixon. The Bengals are used to double dipping. And they also add 2 defensive linemen in Elliss and Paschal. And I like Paschal a lot. I think he could help right away. Elliss is certainly someone as well. But they also fortify the offensive line with Kenyon Green. And I think that's as big of a pick as any of them. If the Bengals could get a Green, if they could get a Linderbaum, if they could get a Booth, if they could get an Elam, any of those guys, you'd feel really good about. Zion Johnson's another one. That's like the big five, right? And you hope one's there. Green was the only one left at 31. And if none are there, I really think that then one of the top quarterbacks is going to be there and the Bengals can move down, add a pick. And then that's when you open the board up even more and allow yourself to potentially take a safety if they wanted to address safety, but certainly tight end is another spot. And so we'll see if the Bengals can do that. But make sure you check out allbengals.com. We're going to do a mock draft weekly. They're not always going to line up with the All Bengals mock, but I wanted to get this one in for you because, it gives you a look, some insight on some of these players that you haven't seen, right? Paschal, a guy who had 15 and a half tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks in 12 games, opted out of the bowl game for Kentucky. Could he, along with Joseph Osai, along with Cam Sample, give the Bengals interior and really their pass rush, because two of those three, all three of those guys can play at the end, two of those three capable of kicking inside. You would like that, right? You'd like a lot of young bodies to throw in there. So maybe that's the route they go. But the Bengals certainly in a good spot. What do you think of the mock? Did I whiff because of no tight end? Hey, that's the beauty of simulations, right? Because every mock you look at, 7 round wides, it's going to have the Bengals taking a tight end. It's going to have the Bengals taking a cornerback early. And who knows? Maybe they're waiting on offensive line, right? And a lot of the mocks that you see, I'm doing the simulation, a realistic simulator each and every week. That way, well, it keeps us honest here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Working on some interviews as well, so hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. We're going to have a ton of draft content coming your way. Just over 3 weeks to go for our channel coordinator, Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapien, signing off for now right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk.